The first sensation was the smell, not decay, not rot, but something infinitely colder and more alien, ozone mixed with the sharp tang of crushed metal and an underlying sweetness like spoiled nectar. Then came the light, a sickly, pulsing violet that throbbed behind Maya's closed eyelids, searing even through her lids. She groaned, trying to lift a hand to shield her face, but her limbs felt like lead weights wrapped in wool. Panic, cold and sharp, stabbed through the fog in her head. Where am I? The last thing she remembered was driving home late after her double shift at the diner, taking the shortcut through the old industrial park. There'd been a flicker, like faulty neon, across the windshield. Then nothing, utter blackness. Forcing her eyes open was agony. The violet light wasn't just bright. It felt invasive, crawling over her skin. She blinked, tears stinging as her vision swam into focus. She wasn't in her car, she wasn't on Earth, she was in a cage, but not iron bars, walls of seamless, shimmering glass, refracting the violet light into dizzying patterns. Beyond the glass stretched an impossible vista, towering obsidian structures that twisted like petrified nightmares against a bruised purple-black sky devoid of stars or moon. Jagged spires pierced the unnatural heavens, and distant winged shapes too large, too wrong glided silently on thermals that smelled of ozone and despair. A low, subsonic hum vibrated through the floor, up through her bones, settling uneasily in her teeth. Hello. Her voice was a dry rasp, swallowed instantly by the vast, oppressive silence. Is anyone there? Movement. Not outside, but inside the cage. Maya scrambled back, her back hitting the cool, unyielding glass. Figures huddled in the corners, shadows given form. 10, maybe 12 people. Their clothes were a bizarre patchwork, a woman in a torn 1942 nurse's uniform, a man in futuristic-looking coveralls stained with grime, a teenager in ripped jeans and a band tee that looked decades out of date. Their faces were gaunt, etched with a terror so profound it had calcified into numb resignation. Eyes, wide and vacant or squeezed shut, reflected the pulsing violet light. No one looked at her. No one spoke. Where are we? Maya pleaded, crawling towards the nearest figure, the nurse. What is this place? The nurse flinched as if struck, curling tighter into herself. She muttered something too low to hear. Please. Maya's voice cracked. My name's Maya. I was driving home. There was a light. Light, croaked the man in the futuristic coveralls. His voice was raw, unused. The glimmer takes you here. He gestured weakly at the impossible cityscape beyond the glass. The Echo City, her domain, her. Who? Who brought us here? A collective shudder ran through the huddled figures. The teenager finally opened his eyes. They were bloodshot, haunted. The amalgam, the queen of echoes, she harvests. Before Maya could ask what that meant, a faint tapping drew her attention. Not from outside, but from the glass wall itself, near the floor, almost hidden by a fold in the strange, rubbery matting covering the cage floor, was a small, dark object, a notebook bound in cracked, unfamiliar leather. Maya crawled over, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pulled it free. It felt cold, damp. Flipping it open, the pages were filled with cramped, frantic handwriting in English, but the script wavered unnervingly. Day. Unknown. Time is fluid here. Poisoned. The glimmer took me near Stonehenge. 1923. Thought it was a storm. The glass cage. Others here. From different places. Times. Thomas. From Chicago, 1987. Anya says she's from a place called Neo-Moscow, 2145. Madness. Saw it when she took Elias. He fought, bit her hand, actual flesh. She recoiled the glass. It shimmered, like static, felt. Thin, the glass resonates with strong emotion. Fear does it. But rage. Rage might be better. Pure, focused defiance. Maybe it could disrupt it, shatter it, or just make a hole, a chance. They're breaking the husk people outside. Sometimes they gather, stare, not with eyes but pits. But yesterday, one scratched at the glass, just once, a tiny sound like remembrance or rebellion. Is there anything left inside? Must try next deep pulse when she comes. Rage, focused rage, aim it at the glass where she enters. Maybe the others, if I can make them feel it too. The final entry trailed off into an ink blot as if the writer had been snatched mid-sentence. Maya's blood ran cold, harvesting, consuming essence, husk people, and a glimmer of hope buried in fury. The oppressive silence deepened. Then it began. The violet light intensified, the pulsing growing stronger, faster. The subsonic hum deepened, vibrating the glass beneath Maya's palms, resonating in her skull, the deep pulse. The huddled figures whimpered, pressing themselves impossibly flatter against the glass walls, trying to vanish. The air grew thick, charged with static that lifted the hairs on Maya's arms. A pressure built, not on her body, but on her mind, a suffocating weight of pure dread. Then a section of the glass wall opposite Maya rippled, not opened, not dissolved, but flowed like liquid mercury, reshaping itself. A tall, arched doorway formed, silent and seamless. She stood framed within it, the Amalgam Queen. She was impossibly tall, slender to the point of skeletal grace, draped in shifting robes that seemed woven from solidified shadow and captured starlight. Her skin wasn't skin. It was polished obsidian, smooth and depthless, reflecting the violet light in cold, hard facets. Long, impossibly articulated fingers, ending in points like shards of black glass, rested at her sides. Her face was a masterpiece of terrifying beauty, features sharp and symmetrical, carved from the same obsidian, but utterly devoid of life or warmth. Where eyes should have been were two pits of swirling, molten violet light, the same light that pulsed throughout the city. They radiated an ancient, chilling intelligence and a hunger that froze Maya's soul. She didn't walk. She glided soundlessly into the cage, the temperature plummeting. Her gaze swept over the cowering figures. It lingered for a moment on Maya, a spark of interest flaring in those violet abysses. Then, with terrifying indifference, she raised one hand, her finger pointed like a black dagger towards the teenager in the band tee. No, the word tore from Maya's throat, raw and desperate. It wasn't just fear for the boy. It was the culmination of her terror, her confusion, the horrifying revelations from the journal. It was a spark igniting the dry tinder of her rage. This thing stole me, stole us all, feeds on us like cattle. The queen's head swiveled back to Maya, slowly, deliberately. The violet eyes narrowed infinitesimally, a ripple of displeasure or curiosity. Maya remembered the journal, rage, focused rage, aim it at the glass. She didn't just feel it, she channeled it. She poured every ounce of her stolen life, her terror, her burgeoning hate into that scream, directing it, throwing it with her mind and her voice at the shimmering wall. Something happened. The glass shivered, not just vibrated with the hum, but visibly rippled like disturbed water. where her scream hit it, a complex, fractal pattern of cracks, thin hairline, but undeniably they're spiderwebbed across the surface for a fleeting second. A high-pitched, discordant chime echoed through the cage, startlingly loud against the deep hum. The violet light flickered erratically around the cracks. The queen froze. The swirling light in her eyes stuttered for a fraction of a heartbeat. A flicker of something like surprise crossed her obsidian features. Her head tilted, a predator momentarily confused by the defiance of its prey. Her gaze snapped from the cracked glass back to Maya, the molten violet pits blazing with a sudden, intense, and terrifying focus. The sheer weight of that alien regard was crushing, promising unimaginable torment. The teenager, forgotten in the sudden shift, scrambled back with a sob, pressing himself against the uncracked glass. The moment lasted less than a second. The deep pulse surged. The cracks in the glass vanished as if they'd never been, the surface smoothing back into flawless, impenetrable clarity. The discordant chime faded. The queen's momentary hesitation vanished, replaced by a chilling, absolute stillness. The air thickened again, heavy with promised retribution. She turned her gaze slowly away from Maya, back towards the huddled figures. The message was clear. The interruption was noted. The defiance registered. Punishment would come. But the harvest continued. Her finger, sharp and final, pointed again. This time towards the woman in the nurse's uniform. The nurse let out a whimper that died in her throat. The obsidian figure glided forward, soundless and inevitable. Her long fingers reached out, not to touch, but to envelop the space around the trembling woman. The air shimmered violently around the nurse. Maya saw a flicker of pure, soul-rending terror in the nurse's eyes, a silent scream forming on her lips. Then she wasn't pulled, button made from her position, dissolving into a vortex of swirling, dark light that flowed towards the queen. The Amalgam Queen inhaled, not air, but the vortex itself. The swirling darkness poured into the hollow of her mouth. Her obsidian form seemed to pulse with a deeper, more profound violet light for an instant. A sigh, soft and satisfied, like wind through dead branches, escaped her. The nurse was gone, utterly, only a faint, ozone-tinged after image remained, quickly dissipating. The queen lowered her hand. She turned, her movements regal and unhurried, and glided back towards the liquid glass doorway. But before she passed through, she paused. Slowly, deliberately, she turned her head back towards Maya. Those swirling violet eyes locked onto hers. There was no anger, no fury, only a terrifying, bottomless curiosity, and the chilling promise of focused attention. It wasn't a look of defeat Maya had caused. It was the look of a gourmet who has unexpectedly discovered a new, potentially exquisite flavor. A faint, impossible curve touched the corner of her obsidian lips, not a smile, but the suggestion of one carved from pure nightmare ice. Then she flowed back through the doorway. The glass rippled and sealed behind her, seamless once more, leaving no trace of her passage except the crushing silence and the lingering scent of ozone and despair. The deep pulse subsided. The violet light returned to its normal, sickly throb. The subsonic hum faded back to its background drone. Silence descended, heavier than before. The remaining figures remained huddled, trembling, their eyes wide with renewed terror. They had seen defiance, they had seen the crack, and they had seen the queen's chilling response. Maya slumped against the glass wall she had cracked, her body trembling uncontrollably. The notebook felt like ice in her hand. She had bought the nurse only a temporary reprieve at best. She had drawn the queen's direct, terrifying attention. The crack was gone, the hope fleeting, but it had worked for a second. The journal was right. Rage could touch the untouchable. Rage could fracture the perfect prison. Outside the glass, Far below the cage, suspended in the obsidian void, shapes moved in the perpetual twilight. Husk people, dozens, perhaps hundreds, shuffling through the Escher-like streets of Echo City. As the Queen's presence faded, one of them stopped, a figure in tattered rags, indistinguishable from the others. It slowly, haltingly lifted its head, not towards the cage, but towards a distant, jagged spire, and then, with agonizing slowness, it raised one skeletal, gray hand, not in supplication, not in despair. It pointed, a single trembling finger aimed at the same spire, just for a moment. Then the hand dropped, and the figure shuffled on, lost again in the faceless tide. Maya saw it, a spark not of hope but of something colder, harder, resolve. She clutched the notebook tighter, the cold leather biting into her palm. The Queen thought she had found a new flavor. Maya would make sure it was the one that choked her. The glass cage held them. The Echo City sprawled below. The Amalgam Queen reigned. But in the suffocating silence, amidst the scent of ozone and stolen lives, a new sound began, the frantic, determined scratching of Maya's fingernail against the cold, unyielding glass, searching for the ghost of a fracture. The harvest wasn't over, but the rebellion, fragile and desperate, had just begun. The Husk people had seen, and somewhere in the hollowed depths of Echo City, a single pointed finger had echoed her defiance. The silence was no longer absolute. It was the quiet before a storm of stolen rage.